Welcome to Nevertheless, a show dedicated to organic leaders and leaderpreneurs. Today, you will discover how to discern your essence and live powerful.
Hi, welcome to Nevertheless, a show for organic leaders and leaderpreneurs. My name is Bidemi Mark-Mordi. How are you doing? It's amazing that we're in April. The thing is, I don't even know why the speed with which the time passes never ceases to amaze me, but that's the truth. It does amaze me that one moment we're saying, oh, this is March, and then the next moment we're saying this is April. What's happening in your part of the world? I'm sure you've heard about the Panama books, right? That's the latest one on the world scene. It just looks like it never stops. There's always something going wrong with our world. The good news is when everything is going wrong with your world, you can look unto God. So today is a good day to look unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. In Nigeria, our economy has practically come to a grind because we have not been able to access petroleum products. But like they say, where there is a will, there is a way. And one thing I know about my people is that we have a tremendous amount of zeal and will. So I know that my people will find a way. But more importantly, I have faith that our government will not fail us. So yes, keep your fingers crossed. Continue to pray. Whatever is happening in your world, in the end, I want you to recognize that it will always be all right. Okay, so it's still Nevertheless the show for organic leaders and leaderpreneurs. It's a warm welcome to you. Last week I said to us that great things are happening at Verbatim, and really great things are happening. As I speak to you, some part of my team are under training so that we can bring you the best with Dukia Radio when that time comes. I hope you did not forget to pray for us. Please continue to pray for us, because what we want to do is ensure that your life receives full expression regardless of where you are at and what it is that you are doing. So yes, we will keep going, we will not stop, and I don't expect you to stop too. Last week, we looked at a very interesting topic, and I hope that it was good for you. We looked at the litmus test for passion. So the question I have for you is, how did you do? Did you take the test? Did it work? What is it that you need to tweak? Send me a message. It's always fun to hear from you, and it's always encouraging to know that what one is doing here is important enough and is making impact. So please remember to send your messages. You can leave a comment right on the website bidemi@bidemimarkmordi.com, or you can go to my Facebook page, Bidemi Mark-Mordi, and just leave a message, and you can be sure that I would respond to you when I'm done. So we looked at the litmus test for passion last week. I remember that one of the things I said on that show was that I was going to show you how it was that what I'm doing today has evolved over time, the benefits of starting small. And somehow I didn't get around to showing you those pictures. So I thought, what's the better way to compensate you than to just give you a full teaching or do a full show on how what I do today has evolved over the years. So it is fun to be able to bring this show your way. When I come back, I'll begin to release to you what it is that we're talking about. It may not be a very long podcast, or maybe it will be, but it is my personal story, and I do hope that by the time we're done, you'll be encouraged by it.
In a world filled with many fears and discouragements, life often becomes a burden. For those who know the way, life's just simple. Don't worry, you're not alone on this life's journey, as Bidemi shares powerful insight and principles from her everyday work and life experiences in her book, Nevertheless. Nevertheless is a book designed to encourage and equip you to face life with courage, hope, and determination. Get a copy of Nevertheless from a bookstore near you, or call 234-813-360-2883. Or send an email to bidemi@bidemimarkmordi.com to place your order now. I guarantee you will make it nevertheless.
Welcome back. The show is still Nevertheless. And I am still Bidemi. That hasn't changed, and I don't think that will change in a very long time. Today on the show, we'll be talking about the evolution of small. Yes, you heard me right. The evolution of small. If you remember last week, I said that when it comes to passion, that every passion will begin as an idea and you ought to start really small so that you can grow it to the full length and breadth of what it is that you see. But today I want us to look at how you start small, because I remember that I also talked about niche focusing. What are you focusing your passion on? And if you have a niche focus, most of the time I see people say, oh no, I'm trying to put together money, I don't have all that, I'm waiting for this and all of that. And before you know what is happening, while you're waiting, one day you wake up and someone else is doing exactly what it is that you wanted to do. Not only is someone else doing it, they're doing it 2 buildings away from you. And that usually would cause a bit of stress for most people. But when you look at what it is that you want to do, usually, if you're like me, or let me not say usually, but the way it works with me is God shows me the final picture. Then He shows me the first step. He never tells me what is in between. But as I continue to walk consistently towards where I'm going, it becomes clearer with each step. And before I know what is happening, people are actually saying this is really great. And I'm wondering, oh really? How did I get here? So we want to look at the evolution of small, and I want to use my first ever major project as the example from start to finish for today's show. It was in February of 2001 that I felt the call to minister to women, and I started a fellowship in my living room where women gathered fortnightly, and not a lot of women, usually anywhere between 10 and on a good day 15, 18 women, 20 women max, just to share from the Bible and learn one thing or the other. So we started that meeting in February of 2001, and fortnightly women will gather in my living room and we'll just share from the word on what it meant to be a woman of purpose and all the things that were our responsibilities and the expectations that the world had on us. Well, part of what I also started to teach in those meetings was the fact that even though we are women and we are called to do a whole bunch of things, that it was extremely important for each one of us to have a dream and be able to push that dream. And that was how we started to teach. By 2002, I realized that, my living room was not getting any bigger. More women were starting to come. But the impact we're making was not justified by the number. What I meant was that people were coming, they were getting blessed. But because the living room could hold only so many people at a time, the numbers we could reach, we couldn't reach them. And that got us thinking, what should we do next? How do we take this message to a wider audience of women? And because my gift is the use of words and I know how to write, writing is a gift that I have, an offshoot of my use of words, I started to think to myself that it would really be nice if one could start a magazine. So I started to speak to God about the magazine, and the more I spoke to God about the magazine, the more I saw a picture of what the magazine would look like. From the get-go, I knew that the magazine would be like the Reader's Digest size of magazine. I knew it would be in full color. I knew it was going to be a beautiful magazine, and it would be just something that was mostly educational, not trashy, not fashion, but something that women who are cerebral and intellectual can read and find roots in God. So I started to dream and I started to talk about this dream. But there was a little snag. I did not have the resources. Neither did I have the technical know-how to publish a magazine of that magnitude. So I kept praying, and then one day we decided to take the leap of faith. When I come back, I'll tell you what I did.
Introducing Dukia Radio, a new online purpose and leadership talk radio for the family. Follow us on Twitter at Dukia Radio and like our Facebook page, Dukia Radio. Dukia Radio, giving life full expression. Coming soon.
Welcome back. By the time I realized that it was the magazine, the first thing we did was we got a name. So we called it Effectual Magazine, and it's based on the scripture that says the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. Because in my book, prayer is not only when you kneel and shut your eyes and speak a monologue or go into a monologue. prayer is a dialogue. So in my mind, prayer is anything you do that turns God's attention to you. So I was thinking about how women would arise and live their lives of purpose, and that becomes a prayer through which God blesses them and their generations. And so the idea for Effectual was born. However, I had a big challenge, and the challenge was simple. There was no way at that point of my life I could afford a magazine in full color. Neither did I have the technical know-how to be able to breed that kind of magazine. But there was something I could do. Prior to this time, I was already running the publication desk in church, which meant I could do newsletters. I knew how to start a newsletter and finish it. So for me, even though the big picture or the picture that God gave me as Effectual magazine was a magazine in full color, I had to start it as a newsletter. And if you look at the picture above this show, especially if you go to my website, you see how this magazine has evolved over the years. So we started as a newsletter. We did them, was 8 pages initially, then we went to 12 pages of a newsletter format, and we'll pack them in 10s in one polythene bags, and we'll sell them for less than $1 each. And the funny thing was, we would make 1,000 copies, we'll pack them into 100 packs. And that meant that even though only 20 women were coming into my living room for these meetings, the magazine was reaching 1,000 people, because when these women come on a fortnightly basis, they will buy and then they will go out and share amongst their friends. And so even though we were just in that tiny flat in the neighborhood where I lived, the word was going out. And what did Effectual contain? Effectual contained the principles from the Word of God. Even as early as that time that we were teaching in these fortnightly meetings. And then we added something on parenting, we just added a few things to make it look like a magazine, even though it was like a newsletter. And we ran like that from 2003 all the way to 2004. 1 year later, I thought about it again and I said, well, we can now start a magazine format. The problem is, it still wasn't going to be a full color magazine. It was going to be a one color magazine. But we released our first edition in a magazine format, and it was a hit. The copies went out so fast that I was amazed. I also hit a few snags because a few people came and said, oh, there's too much of Jesus in the magazine, But that was the mindset, that was the idea that I wanted. So we just stuck to our guns and we kept pushing. By 2005, we started to do sport colors. And by 2008, we went into full blast color magazine. And by 2009, we went to international quality magazine. So over time, even though we started small as a newsletter, we have grown to become not just an international magazine in print. That same Effectual magazine became what I call the leverage for all the other doors that opened to me. It was Effectual magazine that someone saw and called to ask if I could publish his books for him. And by that time, I was a bit more confident in my ability to be able to do this work. And I said, of course, oh yeah, we can publish the book for you. And the rest, as they say, is history. Today, Verbatim, by the grace of God, is a publishing house, and we have quite a number of titles under our belt, and we're still growing. What am I saying? I'm saying that if you start small, your small is bound to evolve into a great thing. So this is not the time to begin to, especially in the economy that we are in, this is not the time to begin to say, oh no, I need it to be bigger, No, just start where you are and start small. However, in starting small, there are a few things you need to know so that when you start small, you start properly. Number one, even though you're starting small, always know what your end product ought to be. What that means is, even though I started the magazine as a newsletter, I always knew that one day, I didn't know how long that would take, but I knew that one day we will get to the point where it will become an internationally acclaimed magazine. For you to know how powerful the magazine has become over the years. Even last week, someone flew in from Australia to Nigeria, and she's constantly buying fresh copies of the magazine every time she comes into town. It tells you how beautifully packaged the magazine is, and it also tells you how powerful or potent the content is. So even though we started as a newsletter, I always knew where we were supposed to end up. So when I say you must be clear about what your end product will be like, I'm saying you're starting small, yes, but do you know what it will look like when you have all the money, the resources, and the manpower to build it to the level that you want it to? So number one, make sure you have clarity of what your end product is like. Number two, make sure that even in the smallest capacity that you're doing what you're doing, you do it with excellence. As a newsletter, we made sure that even though it was a one-color newsletter in bond paper, we made sure that we took care of typographical errors. We made sure that our stories were interesting. We put in some major hard work at that point of releasing the newsletter magazines. And so now that we do full-fledged magazines at an international quality, we still put in extra hard work to make sure that whatever we put out is worth our while. So one, make sure you know what your end product will look like. Two, make sure you operate with excellence from the first day. Number three, make sure you are niche focused. What that means is narrow it down. I didn't say I wanted to do a magazine, then I wanted to do a magazine for everybody. I was doing a magazine for women, but even the women I was publishing the magazine for were a particular kind of woman. Effectua is meant for the mature woman who is a Christian but operates more in the marketplace and is cerebral and intellectual enough to be able to pick up a 100-page magazine and read through and be able to debate the issues if need be. So I wasn't doing a magazine for the woman in the marketplace, the semi-illiterate woman, not because they are not important, but because I had to narrow my niche so that what I was doing would hit the target once it gets out. And I dare tell you that Effectua did hit the target and is still hitting the target. The fourth thing I want you to do is concentrate on the next best step you can take. Once your idea is clear to you, once you know where you are going, once you know what your niche is going to be, make sure that your next step is clear to you. This is not the time to guess. Guesswork will not pay you. Just know where you are going. So for me, it was always, I didn't even own a computer when we started, but I knew what I wanted. So on the days where we would produce, we would have written longhand all our articles. Then I'll go to what we call the business center and sit with the graphics person who will type them and then begin to design. I didn't leave it to him to design whatever. I sat with them every time because I always had a picture in my mind and I wanted that picture to get out. It was the easiest thing that I could do. I could have said, oh, I want to buy my own computer and then I want to go and learn how to do graphics design, but that would have wasted my time. So I did the next easiest and best thing that I could do. Number 5, take baby steps. That is, don't put everything in one plate at once. I didn't try to do a full color magazine from that outset because I couldn't afford it. I had a knowledge gap. But what I could do, I did, and I did excellently. Then, the 5th thing, or is it the 6th thing now, I'm losing count, that you want to do is make sure you are consistent. For the 2 years thereabouts that we did the magazine in newsletter format, we did not miss one edition. We made sure we were consistent so that at the end of 2 years, even though we had a law trying to put together funding to do the proper magazine edition, at least the first edition as a magazine, people were asking for the magazine because they had gotten used to the fact that like clockwork, once in 2 months, we will start to distribute. So make sure you are consistent. Be very consistent with what you're doing. One of the greatest challenges for small businesses is that we're sporadic 9 times out of 10. Today we see you, tomorrow we don't see you. It makes your customers and your target audience go looking for what you could give them from other sources. Your responsibility is to ensure that you are consistent. Every day, be consistent. The 7th thing I need you to remember is that you must start where you can. Do what you can where you are. If I wanted to take a course in journalism and stuff like that, I probably would not have been able to push through because I will have a cost issue. Remember that I said at that point, we didn't have a lot of money. But I started right where we are. And every time that I came across people and they say, oh, is this what you're doing? I usually would tell them what the full-fledged picture is like. But make them understand that I'm starting small. So baby steps are okay. Starting where you are and doing what you can is extremely important. The eighth thing I want you to remember in the evolution of small is you must know when you are ready to expand. You must know when you are ready to expand. By the time we had done 2 years in newsletter format, I knew without a shadow of doubt that we were ready to up our game into a full magazine format. And so we went from 12 pages to about 52 pages. So always know when you are ready to expand. Know when your market is ready. Know when you can take on the additional responsibility. Because here's the truth of the matter. After doing 12 pages for 2 years, I could do it with my eyes closed. It was time to expand so that I could take on fresh challenges and in the process exercise my muscles. So do you know when you are ready? In the evolution of your small, once you know that you are ready, then your responsibility is to step it up. Now let me quickly say something about stepping it up. Stepping it up means you will make further sacrifices. It will look like you are starting all over because the magnitude of the things that you need to deal with will be more. But it is okay because that's the only way small becomes great. So you need to stretch yourself and take that next step. Number 9, never forget your why. Never forget your why. In those days, whether as a newsletter or as the magazine format, I always remember that the reason why I set out was that growing up as a young woman, up to the time I got married, there were no wholesome magazines that I could read and learn about being a woman and actualizing my dream as a woman. So that was my big why, and there was no way I was going to give up that why because I could already see that what we were doing was useful to the people who were following us. You need to recognize that starting small is about building muscle so that you get used to doing. A lot of us just fold our hands, waiting until it's big. Nothing starts big. Last week I said that every seed has in it the capacity for a tree. But no seed begins as a tree. So you need to know that in that small idea, if you're faithful and you're doing what it is that you are doing, tomorrow, in 5 years, in 3 years, in 10 years, you'll be amazed how your small evolves into something really great. With Effectua came eventually a publishing outfit, and that became what paid the bills for Verbatim Communications. From there we went to leadership trainings because that small thing that you do is bound to evolve. And then there came along international speaking engagements. Then of course events, conferences, gatherings where we continued to explore what we're doing to empower other people. But you see, if I had not started small, I would never have been able to do all these other big things that most people see. And that's why with Effectua, it doesn't matter how many times I fall off the wagon, I always come back to it because it's not an emotional thing for me. It's just because I understand the power in small. So as I round off today, I want to ask you one very simple question. Does the idea seem too small to you? I want to encourage you that no idea is too small. There is so much in potential in that small idea that if you will just push, there's no telling how far you can go. The other question I want to ask you is, can you see your final bus stop? Do you know what small carries in potential? Because if you know what small has or carries in potential, let me tell you one thing that you will do for sure. You will give it everything that it took. I can't begin to tell you how many times I had to go to the business center back and forth, something that I could so easily have done at home if I owned a computer of my own. But I didn't own a computer, and I was not going to let that defeat me. Sometimes I'll get to the business center and the guy had some other jobs lined up. And then I will come back. He hasn't finished. I will come back. I kept coming back and I kept coming back. And let me even tell you a little secret. Just by sitting with him to watch him get the magazine done every other month, I started to learn how to use a computer and what I could do on my own. So when eventually we could afford a computer and my husband bought me one as a gift, I didn't have to go looking for someone to teach me how to use the computer. I know that you want a big, gigantic dream. But I also want to say that if you start from big, It may confuse you. It may overwhelm you. It is always safer to start from small. The bonus point for starting for small is the fact that when you start small, your mistakes are small and sometimes they are negligible. Imagine that I started the magazine spending say $2,000 or $3,000 every edition. What happens when a mistake is made? At that point I was spending about $30 to do the number that I was doing. So even if I made a mistake, it was okay because I could remedy it. Imagine that I started at $3,000. One mistake will cripple me for life. I can assure you it can. So be encouraged. Everything that you start, it doesn't matter how small, can grow to be mighty. You just need to give it your all. Be consistent. Know your big picture. That is, know how your final product should look like. Reflect daily on the things that you do and how you can get better. And make sure you continue to develop so that when it is time for you to take on the next step, you will not be afraid to do so.
Introducing Dukia Radio, a new online purpose and leadership talk radio for the family. Follow us on Twitter at Dukia Radio and like our Facebook page, Dukia Radio. Dukia Radio, giving life full expression. Coming soon.
I'm so grateful I started Effectua in those years. I'm so grateful to all the things that I learned in the process, because they've made me the person that I am today, and they are the reason why I don't give up on any project easily. From Effectua as a newsletter, again, we're talking an online radio station. If you ask me, we've come a long way, and this is in about 13 years. For some people it's nothing, but for me and for where I'm coming from, it is a lot. So you may be in my shoes like I was 13 years ago, and you really don't know what it is that you're doing. You just know that you have this tiny idea and you're trying to push it. Can I encourage you today and say don't stop? Because inside of that tiny seed is a mighty forest if you do it well. Till next week when I'll come your way again, don't forget to look out for Dukia Radio. Keep praying for us. Go on Twitter, look for the handle at Dukia Radio and follow us. For those who are interested in Purpose University, look out for my announcement on the takeoff of that course. And finally, remember that when you discover purpose, you live a powerful life. God bless you.
Thank you for listening to Nevertheless. For more information and resources, call 0813-360-2883 or send an email to bidemi@bidemimark-mordi.com. Don't forget that when you discover your purpose, you will live powerful.